There are some stories that you come across where it's almost impossible to get your head around what the people involved must have been thinking. Sometimes these stories involve a big dose of hubris, where overconfidence leads to inevitable tragedy. Other times it just seems to be, failure to anticipate the most likely outcome, or, as they would say in the north of England, a complete lack of common sense. As we will see, this tragic ZORB story seems to fall firmly into the latter category. The incident took place on January 3, 2013 at the Dombai ski resort on Mount Musashitara in southern Russia's Caucasus mountain range close to the border with Georgia. Powder lined the slopes, it was a crisp, clear, sunny winter day, and 25-year-old ski resort employee Ravil Chekhanov had brought his ZORB-style inflatable ball to work with him that day in order to drum up a little business on the side by offering exciting rides down the learner slope for just 300 rubles. For anyone unfamiliar with the concept of zorbing or ball riding, it's really quite simple. A zorb is a large inflatable plastic ball, usually around 3 meters in diameter. There is an inner sphere of around 1.5 meters of diameter where the rider or riders are positioned. The two spheres are joined together with spokes or tubes to give it structural rigidity, and a small entrance tube provides access to the inner chamber. Sometimes there are straps or harnesses to keep the rider in a fixed position, and sometimes there aren't. It just depends on the type of ride. Zorbing is usually done on specially made tracks or zones, but it can be as simple as rolling around in a grassy field. The only real prerequisites for some safe zorbing are a gentle gradient and a sturdy net or fence to catch the ball if it rolls off to the side. The one thing you certainly don't want in the vicinity of your zorb track is a 4-kilometre long steep mountain slope punctuated with cliffs and rock outcrops. However, at Dombai Ski Resort, that's exactly what you got. Dombai Ski Resort sits at just under 10,000 feet of elevation on a broad ridge just below the summit peak. Here you can see the chairlifts, the main ski run, and the learner piste running along the slope of the saddle. Now, you don't have to be a genius to spot the very obvious danger in rolling a zorb ball around up here, and that is the huge gully to the left, which will undoubtedly funnel any wayward rolling balls straight down the 4-kilometre long rocky mountainside. However, Ravil Chekhanov must have had a good sales pitch, or his prices were insanely cheap, as before too long he had his first 2 willing customers. 27-year-old Denis Burakov and his friend 33-year-old Vladimir Sherbakov, both experienced snowboarders and winter-time thrill seekers. The setup was pretty simple. Once the 2 riders were strapped in, the ball would be launched down the baby slope by Chekhanov and his assistant, whilst another mate waited at the end of the slope to catch them. Now, there are a couple of problems right here straight off the bat. Firstly, there'd been no test run made with an empty ball. Burakov and Sherbakov would in effect be testing out the Zorb run as paying customers. Nobody had any real notion of where the ball would actually go. Secondly, the idea that his mate at the end of the track is going to be able to catch them on his own is wholly over-optimistic. It's a 3-metre diameter ball with 2 adult men inside travelling at some speed. So even if by some miracle the catcher happens to be standing just in the right place, the most likely outcome here is that the ball just knocks him flying, and then you've got an out-of-control Zorb rolling around in the middle of the downhill skiers. And that's the best case scenario. As it turned out, the actual result was infinitely worse. As Chekhanov prepared to release the ball, a small crowd of onlookers had gathered to watch. "How much does it cost?" said somebody. 300 rubles per person, says Chekhanov. "Where does the ball go?" "You'll see." Yes, they would see all right. Now, due to YouTube restrictions, I can't show the full video, and so I've had to grab some screenshots so you can get an idea of what happened. Chekhanov and his assistant push the ball, with Burakov and Sherbakov inside, off down the baby slope while his friend waits at the other end. The ball quickly picks up speed, and you can see the 2 men inside spinning around. Due to the left-leaning camber of the piste, the ball soon bumps the berm on the left-hand side, and immediately ricochets off to the right side of the track, and it looks like it's going to jump over the right-hand berm and go off into a group of skiers. The catcher runs to the right to intercept it, but then the ball veers left again, rolling off the end of the piste, losing speed in the deep snow, and curving around down into the gully basin. The catcher, by this point running left and right like somebody out of the Keystone Cops, actually makes contact with the rolling ball, but he can't grab it. He falls over in the snow as the ball begins to slowly roll down into the gully. Another man runs in from the right, but he's got no chance of getting to the ball. With agonising slowness, it bumps over some rocks before picking up speed and finally disappearing from view. The watching crowd mutters nervously, "Oh no, he's going. What is there at the bottom? There's nothing." A zoomed-in camcorder caught a glimpse of the ball further down the slope, going like a bat out of hell, bouncing and clipping rocks as it flew off down the slope. The Zorb travelled down the mountainside for about a kilometre. It's estimated that it would have reached speeds of up to 60 km per hour, subjecting the occupants to multiple excessive high-velocity impacts and sustained G-forces throughout the entire descent. The ball eventually came to a stop on this frozen lake halfway down the mountain. Both men were thrown out of the deflated and damaged Zorb and came to rest on the ice. Incredibly, they were both still alive, but badly injured. Burakov had a broken neck, and Sherbakov was concussed, battered and bruised. A report from the Times stated, "Two guys had been thrown out of the Zorb. One of them was lying without visible signs of life, the other crawled about 10 metres up the slope and then stopped. Rescuers took a very long time to arrive, and by rescuers it was basically just two skiers with first aid kits. We didn't see any medical snowmobiles or anything like that." Shubakov survived, although apparently he had trouble walking afterwards. Burakov died from his injuries en route to the hospital, and he left behind a wife and 2 young children. The organiser, Chekhanov, was given a 4-year suspended sentence for reckless endangerment and criminal negligence and ordered to pay Burakov's family the equivalent of $15,000 in compensation. It's always tempting to wrap up a story like this with some sort of sage life lesson that can be taken away from this tragedy, but honestly, it's hard to know what to say in this instance. I guess if you had to try and sum it up in one sentence, it's going to be something like, when engaging in outdoor pursuits, always try to use your own judgment and common sense, and as a rule of thumb, never agree to be the first person to go on an untested Zorb ride organised by a Russian millennial on the top of a 10,000-foot mountain peak.